Hello and welcome to the Grounds Crew. My name is Alex.
Alexander Sr.
And this is Paul.
And today we are going over an NFL update. It's been a few weeks. So we're going to start back at week 17. Paul, go ahead and take us away.
All right, I'm mainly just going to go through the games and just tell you a little updates as we go through. They started that week on Christmas Day, and there were two games that day, and both of those games were involved with four teams that had played 3 times in 10 days each other. And quite the interesting day. Chiefs beat the Steelers 29-10. And if you didn't get a chance to see the after game, Andy Reid dressed up like Santa Claus in the locker room, and they really celebrated big.
Well, he's
They
got the
weren't.
body type for it.
Yeah, he does. They were really concerned if Mahomes was going to be able to stay in that game. He had a sore ankle, but he did very good and even ran some that game and did quite good. So he was fine.
It did need the rest to help him in that one.
Exactly. The Ravens beat up Texans that day, 31-2, and Lamar Jackson began that day to start
Did
the
you say
break.
31-2?
31-2.
So they only got a
Yes,
safety.
that's all they got. And
Two.
Lamar
Count
Jackson broke the
two
NFL quarterback
punishment.
rushing record. He accounted for 3 touchdowns in the Ravens' 31-2 romp over the Texans. And then to go the other direction, we go to Thursday's game on December 26th. It was the only game
Do
of
we have
that
to
day.
talk about this one?
I know. This game is unbelievable. This sounds like something from the first quarter, but the final was 6-3. It was the Seahawks against the Bears, and the Seahawks won 6-3. Absolutely horrendous. That means there was no touchdowns in this game. It was all field goals. That is absolutely horrendous playing of football. Barely worth talking about. Saturday, the game that I want to bring up, I'm not going to bring up all of them, but the one that I wanted to bring up was the uh, Broncos and Bengals. It was at Bengals, and that went into overtime and ended up 30-24. And this was when Burrows really began to start making a push for almost becoming the MVP of the year. He's just been an amazing quarterback, and it's been really neat to see him take off. This is also the week that the Rams started to really take charge of their division, and they beat the Cardinals that day 13-9. That takes us into Sunday the 29th, and there wasn't any big, huge things that happened on that day. The Bills beat the Jets, which, of course, that would happen. The Raiders and the Saints played that day. That wasn't a big deal of a game. Neither one of them really meant much. The Raiders won. The Giants played the Colts, and that was a high-scoring game, which sort of shocked everyone because neither one of those teams have been good this year, and it ended up 45-33 with the Giants winning. Um, the Cowboys and Eagles ended up the way you would think it would. The Eagles won 41-7. This was also the day that uh, Buccaneers began to make some moves, and they beat the Panthers that day 48-14. But the one that I wanted to really talk about here on this day was also the Dolphins and the Browns. Now, the Dolphins usually struggle when they are in cold weather, and it was cold that day. And they have typically, it's been teased that if it's below 50 degrees, they won't win. They won that day, 20-3. And so that's good. It was played in the Browns, and the Browns have had a terrible year. They only have 3 wins. So that's bad. But the Dolphins weren't good away. So it was just good to see the Dolphins be able to win in cold weather. Um, this was
Tyreek
also a
Hill
day.
is out of Miami. Tyreek Hill wants
Who?
out.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Bye bye.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I think about that. Uh, I'm
Don't need him.
yeah. I mean, he did a lot of drama with us this year with what he did with the police. He got pulled over by the police department and just caused all sorts of grief on his way to practice one day or a game. I don't remember which, but just caused all sorts of grief. There was a nice game within the division of the Vikings and Packers on the 29th, and the Vikings did win, but it was a very close 27-25 game. Um, and then uh, this was also when the Commanders started to take a real big jump into the final season. The Commanders won that day over the Falcons, 30-24. That was in overtime as well. So there was some big games that happened, and then the real shocker, even though the Lions won on Monday night, the 30th, it was 40-34 against the 49ers, and I just was stunned. I thought they would beat them much more than that. They did win, and a win's a win, but I was shocked when the score was 40-34. I thought they would blow them apart. So that's week 17. Now, before we get started into week 18, I want to explain something about football. One of the things that happens in football is if you know by week 18, you know where you're going to be standing in the playoffs, particularly if you're a dominant team. And so, because of that, often you will sit your stars. And that's a big thing to remember as we go through some of this. Because some of the top teams may not play their stars. And so you may end up with some weird scores, some weird things that happen. It's going to look very lopsided, and people get all excited because, oh, wow, they got beat. Whoa, man, their team's falling apart. Not at all. It's very common in football to rest your players. I know they only play once a week, but it's an extremely brutal sport, and it's just one of those things that's much, much different um, than other sports. Another thing that you keep in mind is sometimes they won't rest their players because they want to make sure that they're getting the right seed spot so that they have home field advantage or so that they get the bye or whatever they need. So those things all matter in this week. So
I,
this
I
is not just a flyby week that
mhm.
it doesn't matter to some teams, but other teams it seriously matters. And it can also be a week where a lesser team can be the spoiler. And so you have to be careful of that. So it's just a strategy week a little bit. You have to really think about what you're doing because you can end up with a loss and it can affect where you play. It can affect your seed, where you are at in the rankings. And so all of that means something. And so it's just an interesting week. The last week of football is always a very interesting week. And
I
so
think
I'll
in oh, I
no,
think
go ahead.
another thing to think about is there's a big debate whether you should rest your players or not, especially because with Wild Card Weekend coming up, some of those teams aren't even going to play in Wild Card Weekend,
That's
which
right.
for us it just passed, but we're still just passing week 17 here. Um, so yeah, it's really, do you want your players to make sure they're healthy going into the playoffs, or do you want them to have at least a little bit of momentum going into the playoffs?
Well, I don't want to talk about college here. We'll do that at another podcast. But I will
Mm-hmm.
say this: when you rest in the college, it definitely affects them worse than it does when you rest them in the majors in the NFL. Um, and I think that's important to remember because they do rest sometimes even in the the college, and we just now saw that some of the teams that had a rest did not do as well as the teams that kept playing. Um,
Interesting.
and so there is something to that momentum. You're exactly right, and momentum is a big deal in football, a lot more than in other sports. You, you know, I, I don't know how to say this. Baseball has innings that automatically stop things and automatically, after 3 outs, the other team comes out and all that. In football, there is something to the momentum of being able to stop. I guess there is in baseball if you had like 3 outs and you're, quick 3 outs and then you come right back and you can do that, but you don't think of that as much as you do in football.
No.
In football, you really truly can begin to feel that momentum uh, flow when your defense makes a big stop, and then all of a sudden the offense comes out and just pounds it. Um, and so, yeah, there is something to it. You're exactly right, and each each position has to be careful how much they rest, because there is a difference in resting certain positions compared to others. And maybe we'll talk about that in another podcast. But let me just quickly go through this week 18 because there was some fun things that happened. The other thing that's big about this week is that usually by now you're playing your own division. So that also sometimes makes it very big. Um, so, for instance, okay, uh, on Saturday the 4th, which just happens to be my birthday, January 4th, uh, the Browns were at the Ravens, and it didn't mean a lot to the Ravens except for, okay, that it did mean something for their seed spot and whether they would be at home for some of the wild card stuff and division stuff. So that's big, okay. And so they did play Lamar the whole game, and it was 35-10 is how they won. And that same day, the same division was Bengals against the Steelers, and that was more along the lines of who was going to be second in the division, who was going to be third in the division. And once again, the Bengals won. Very tight game, 19-17. And I really think Joe Burrow has a big chance of
MVP.
no,
I
I
don't
wouldn't
know
go that
about that.
I wouldn't go that far, but he definitely has a chance uh of making something of this team if they keep him. And this was the beginning of the slide. No, the week before this was the beginning of the slide of the Steelers just continually losing, and that became a big deal. Uh, and it's still a big deal because they haven't won yet, and now they're done. Uh, and now there's talk of whether they need to get rid of their coach or what all needs to happen. Um, all right, Sunday the 5th, the Panthers played at the Falcons, and this is what I'm talking about with the spoiler stuff. The Panthers came in, fought like crazy the whole game, and they ended up winning 44-38. Bryce Young, uh, one of those stud guys in college and just hadn't really become anything yet in NFL. He had 5 touchdowns that day. That's amazing, and that's an awesome day. And so, uh, yeah, I mean, now did the Falcons play everybody? Absolutely. So this game meant something to both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Panthers, not that they were going to do anything, but they were going to be a spoiler. And that's exactly what they did. And the Falcons ended up very messed up there. Um, what used to be a rival long ago was Washington against Dallas. And this was back when both of these teams were very big. And this year, of course, the Cowboys haven't been that good, especially at home, and they were at home this day. But this game ended up much closer than we expected, 23-19. Commanders did win. Um, and so that means that the Cowboys only won 2 games at home this year, which is just terrible. And
Hey,
the
more
Cowboys
wins than
are
Jake Paul in Dallas.
what's that?
More wins than Jake Paul in Dallas.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, they are looking for a new coach, by the way, and rumor has it that Deion Sanders is one of the ones that they may be getting for a coach, which would be very interesting. Um, uh, the other game that was just a shocker was the Bears at Packers, and the Bears rallied and ended up winning 24-22. And a bad thing about that game was the Packers lost some of their players to injuries. And that's why you have to be careful who you play. They ended up losing Love, which is their quarterback, to an injury. That's a big deal. Okay. When you're 11-6 and you're playing a 5-12 game team, and yet you're trying to play because of your division and where you place, and then all of a sudden your quarterback gets hurt, now you're in rough shape. And so that's what I'm talking about. That's the risk you take. And
Can I just point out our other person as?
oh yeah, wow.
Oh, he's a
Wow.
meme now for sure. How do you?
Yeah, he's gonna fall off the chair here in a second.
Yeah. What's going on?
Oh wow.
Welcome back.
That's hilarious.
All right, so I just got
So-
back from the trip. So I've been away a few days and I hardly got any sleep. So
You're a meme now. It's official.
Texans beat the Titans 23-14. And then the overtime game was another game that really didn't mean much, but it was the Jaguars at Colts 26-23. The Colts won at home. I really think that Joe Flacco just really helped that team of Colts this year. It's amazing this old guy comes back and just really helps them.
Over the past couple years, whatever team he's been on, he's had an impact.
Absolutely. The guy's just an amazing leader.
I don't know how he's not. There's 32 teams. How is he not a starter?
Well,
Like an
he is
everyday starter.
He is an older guy, and I don't know that he even cares whether he's a starter every day. So it's not. I don't know. I think sometimes it's his own fault. He says, "No, no, no. I'll let them go play. I just wanted to show up a day." I mean, you got to remember this guy was literally sitting on a couch, and then all of a sudden is called up, and so it's like it's just an honor to be there, in his opinion. And here's one of these games I was talking about. So the Bills are at the Patriots. The Bills are 13-4. The Patriots are 4-13. And the Bills already know what they're doing. They already know what's going on. And the final score, Patriots win 23-16. And everybody could look on and say, "Oh no, the Bills are falling apart. They don't have a chance." Literally, Josh Allen came out just long enough to say that he was still doing his streak of so many teams. That's all he did. That's all he did was come out long enough for like 2 plays or whatever, and that was it. What's interesting about this? So here they win this game, the Patriots do, and after this game is when the coach of the Patriots gets fired.
Yep. So
And
what happened was, I guess Robert Kraft didn't like that they weren't going to be getting the first pick anymore.
yes,
They lost out on the first overall pick with that win, and then Kraft had a quote saying something about this year wasn't even his fault, but yeah, he still fired him.
yeah, I am really confused about this entire firing right here. First of all, I mean, you're still dealing with the heartache of Belichick and all that stuff, and everybody already has the bittersweet of what are we even going to do here? We've lost everything we've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knew it was going to be a rough year from the beginning, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And everybody knew that this game was probably going to be bad, no matter whether it was the first string or second string or whoever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they came out blazing from the beginning and had the lead most of the game. And it was like, wow, I can't believe this. Of all times to fire him, but then it came out that the owner's like, no, we wanted to lose it. And it's like, seriously? I mean, seriously? You're going to say that? And so I don't know how I would feel as a fan. I understand what he's saying, that you do start thinking about, the draft picks. But what are you just going to fumble the ball? I mean, those are tough, tough, tough things, and usually they're not said out loud because it's like, no, you can't say that.
I was just assuming Kraft was thinking that. Did he actually come out and say that?
I don't know that he did, but it looked way too obvious that that's what happened.
Yeah.
It
But
looked way
they
too
did
obvious.
get an experienced coach in Mike Vrabel. He coached Derrick Henry with Tennessee. So
Yeah,
I mean, hopefully
yeah,
he does something for the Patriots. Is
yeah,
right now the Patriots only won one more game than the Titans did this year. So
yeah. I know. Now, what's amazing is the next game is the Giants and the Eagles, and the Eagles. Okay, so there was a big discussion the week coming up to this.
hmm
Barkley could have with 100 yards, I think it was, broken a record.
right.
And once again, it's that age-old story. They don't need to play him at all because they've already got it cranked. They're playing the Giants, who are 3 and
hmm
14. Okay, and it's like, seriously, do you play him or not? If there was no record there of 100 yards that he needed, there wouldn't even be a discussion about this. It'd be like, no, 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 he's not going to play. Well, finally, Barkley comes out himself and says, I'm not worried about the record. I don't even care. And everybody was just stunned because he would have easily got 100 yards. I mean, that's not even a question.
Against his
Well,
old team, by the way.
yeah, that's right. They ended up sitting Barkley and Hurts, and they still won. Uh, so you sit your leading running back plus your leading quarterback, and they still won 20-13. And they actually shut them out in the first half altogether, and they only had 3 points by the third quarter. So unbelievable. I mean, it just tells you how bad the Giants really are. Um, and so it's very sad. Um, so anyway, uh, let's see. Let's keep going here.
Chiefs lost.
Saints and Buccaneers. The Saints lost once again, 27-16 or 19. Excuse me. Buccaneers were looking super good by then. And here's another game that just looks so lopsided. The whole Broncos and Chiefs. Um, the Chiefs had no reason to play anybody, and
No.
they didn't. And yet, you talk about a lopsided game, 38-0. And also, the Chiefs were lucky to get out of Dodge because they had all sorts of problems because of the snow that came through there.
Right.
They had like close to a foot of snow or something, could barely get out of the place. Um, so, and if you haven't seen the memes that's out there about the refs that are so much for the Chiefs side, they they had pictures of the refs clearing the runway with shovels so that the Chiefs could take off. It's so
I
funny.
believe it. I believe it.
So funny, the stuff they make fun of. It's hilarious. The Chargers beat the Raiders, and that was 34-20. And that was not anything. I mean, the Chargers played some of their people definitely and did good. The Seahawks and the Rams. That was a big game that day, and it ended up 30-25 with the Seahawks over the Rams. The Rams are looking really good. Matthew Stafford looked very good. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Dolphins and Jets. This was another one that was on the road for the Dolphins, and Rodgers actually looked good for this last game, which he's been up and down all year. And 32-20, And it's just interesting to think that you've had Rodgers and Wilson and Flacco, three old guys. And Rodgers was the one that was the most mouth of the three, that I'm the best and I'm coming back and I'm gonna do the best and help Jets and I'm gonna be number one and blah blah blah. And then he gets hurt, of course, last year, the first play, and then he still trashes talks even more. I'm coming back as strong as ever, and he does nothing. And it's like, shut your mouth. These other two guys are just quietly coming back and doing all sorts of stuff. And it's like, wow, you're just making an idiot out of yourself. And so I don't know what's going to happen to Rodgers. I doubt if they keep him. But 32-20, the Jets did win over the Dolphins. He had a season high of 4 touchdowns that day.
Do you think
So
his struggles this year was because of his injury last year?
that's a great question. And at his age, any injury is going to take time to recover. And so that very well could be. That very well could be
Because
that.
if he plays, let's just say he plays one more year, I think he has a better year than he did this year.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree. All right, that same day, the Cardinals did beat the 49ers, which again wasn't a major thing. Cardinals are good at home, for one thing, but they smashed them 47-24. And then the game that just was a total shock. Everybody expected the game of the week, almost the game of the year for the division, was the Vikings at Lions. And everybody expected it to be the battle of battles. And the thing was, it was the NFC North, and whoever won would be the number 1 seed. Whoever lost would be the number 5 seed. So it was a huge game for both teams. Both of them had a very good winning record away and at home. And so everybody expected. Oh, by the way, it was the first time that two teams with 14 wins had ever played against each other. And so it was just a mammoth game, one of the best games ever in football, is what was predicted.
Supposed
And
to.
then Lions beat up the Vikings 31-9. And I just am dumbfounded. I couldn't believe it. I mean, for the way that the Vikings had played all year, to just choke like that was absolutely unbelievable.
And you want to
Um,
hear something? The trend continued into Wild Card weekend.
I know, I know. We're going to talk about that.
Scored the same amount of
So
points.
we've got a run here, but let me just quickly go through this wild card. So Saturday, January 11th. So we're almost done. January 11th was the Texans and Chargers. This game ended up being much different than I expected. It started off very slow. Nobody knew what was going to happen because it started off so slow. And then all of a sudden, the Texans took off, and it was 32-12 for an ending, and great ending to that game. And then the Ravens and Steelers, um, 28-14. The Ravens won. I was so glad. I was so worried because Jackson's had some trouble in the past with the Steelers, and this was the end of that slide for the Steelers. And I don't know what's going to happen to their quarterback. I really don't. I mean, not to their quarterback, to their coach. He's been there a long time.
Tomlin?
My brother told me. My brother told me something that I have a hard time believing this. He thought he heard that the Steelers have never fired a coach. That's hard to believe. I just wow. I ought to look into that more and try
I
to
need
see.
sources for that one.
Yeah, that was amazing. I was like, what? You gotta be kidding me. Sunday, the 12th. Now remember, these games everybody's playing. Okay, so I don't want you to think that we're back to everybody playing now. They're playing your best players. The Broncos are at the Bills, um, and that game was just a blowout. The Broncos scored at the beginning, and that was 7 points. And then after that, it was all Bills, and it ended up 31-7, and it was just an absolute blowout. Um, and then that same day, Sunday, um, the opposite way, the Packers didn't score the whole first half. and they were playing the Eagles, and it ended up 22-10, and the Eagles won. And the Eagles are 8-1 at home, which is just amazing. And when you're going into the playoffs with that kind of record, that's pretty good. So I would look out whenever the Eagles are at home. That's a huge deal. But the game that was just absolutely amazing was the Commanders and Buccaneers. Everybody was on the side of the Buccaneers just for the upset of it and just because of Mayfield is one of those guys you either love him or you hate him. And if you love him, you're totally on his side. But he can be mouthy. This Daniels is an amazing guy. And
Yeah.
right at the end, they came back and a walk-off field goal. They haven't been in the playoffs since 2006. And it's just an amazing story of the Commanders beating the Buccaneers 23-20 right at the end. And I'm thrilled with it. I really am. I'm thrilled that the Commanders are there. It just excites me. I love it. And then the Monday night game, which again should have been a much better game than what it ended up. It just was pathetic.
Vikings
And
fell apart.
that is the Vikings and the Rams. Everybody expected this to be a stellar game again and just amazing. The Vikings had been 6-2 away. They were doing so good. Darnold was an amazing quarterback all year long. This was his first time he'd ever been in the playoffs. And both of these games, he scores 9 points each time, which means he did not do a touchdown the entire time. That's terrible. Okay. And the bad thing is, they're not going to give him anything. Ended up 27-9. I doubt he comes back to the Rams.
You mean to the Vikings?
I mean the Vikings. And I'm just not sure what's going to happen. So then that leads us up to this coming weekend, and there's just going to be some amazing games. Saturday's schedule is the Texans at the Chiefs. My heart would love to see the Texans with the upset, but I can't see it happening.
America is rooting for Houston.
When you look at their records, okay, the Texans are 10-7 overall, 5-4 away. The Chiefs are 15-2. Now remember, one of those was that blowout that nobody played. Okay, so let's just say 15-1. But their home record is 8-0. Okay. Right now, the spread on that, they've got them by 8 points, Kansas City. That's over a touchdown. Okay. That's huge. I mean, that when you have that's a huge statement. So yeah, the Cinderella team there is definitely the Texans, and it would be absolutely amazing if it happens. Okay. But I don't think it will. I really don't.
No. I think Chiefs are winning that, and if they don't, they'll get a flag, and then they'll win it.
Yeah, really.
But I think this
the
next
same
game is interesting to see because if you would have saw this matchup in the as a playoff game a couple of years ago, you would have been like, "What?"
Yeah, exactly.
In recent memory, these two teams have been horrible.
Horrible.
Or in the words of
Commanders,
Shaquille O'Neal, horrible and awful. Horror awful.
Commanders and Lions. No one, you're exactly right. Even within the last 3 years, no one would have said these teams meant anything. And now you look at their records. The Commanders are 12-5, 5-3 away. They're playing against the Lions, who are 15-2, 7-2 at home. Once again, I would say there's a lot of people. Well, no, I'm not even going to say that. I was going to say there's a lot of people going for the Commanders, but that's not true. Neither one of these teams have been there enough that I don't I think this is a flip coin as far as who people are going for because they don't care.
Well,
I'd
like you
love to
said,
see them go.
Washington hasn't been in the playoffs since what was it, 2006?
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
last time the Lions meant something or ever have had
Oh
any
no.
value was when they had Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
they haven't been a great team most of my life. Seriously. Um, but their spread 9.5 for Detroit. That's huge. Okay. And I
huge.
don't know that I disagree with it. I mean, Jaden Daniels has done very well, but everybody has to remember he is a rookie. And as you go deeper into the postseason, it becomes tougher and tougher and tougher. And you're going to the Lions country, and they have been absolutely stellar. Um, Now I must hasten on. Sunday, there's two games. The Rams at Eagles. This game should be an amazing game. The Rams
Yeah.
are coming off some amazing games. The only thing that really is on the Eagles side is that they are 8-1 at home. And so because of that, the Phillies have a 6 spread, which I really like that because that way it's not a touchdown. And then the last game is a Sunday, not really late game. It's a 6:30 game. Um, but it's the game I can't wait. Ravens at Bills. And this should be MVP quarterback against MVP quarterback. One of those two is going to get it. And it's going to be super cold. Right now, the temperature there is 16 degrees. It's going to be super cold. And they have the Baltimore spread at 1. And I just, of course, I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan. If we win that, if Jackson's big that day, he has the MVP. I can tell
I
you,
don't think you can take account into playoffs into MVP voting, can you?
well, you're not supposed to, but I don't know how you can't. I don't know how this game will not affect the MVP. It has to. I mean, when they're playing each other, it almost has to. I don't know how it can't. So this coming week, so let me just recap. I would love to
Give me
see
your
the Texans.
winners.
I would love to see the Texans beat the Chiefs, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I agree.
I really don't care who wins the Commanders Lions game. I love both of them as far as for the postseason. I don't care who wins that game. I think
Who
the
do you
Lions
think
will
is
win.
going to win?
I
Lions?
think the Lions will win, but I don't care who wins it. Rams and Eagles, Eagles definitely for me. Ravens and Bills, I can't go against my Ravens uh, because I really think the Ravens could go all the way this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my picks.
Yeah,
Um,
so I have the home teams on Saturday and the away teams on Sunday. Look at that. I
yeah,
have the
there you go.
Chiefs and the Lions, and then I feel like the LA Fires, which like hopefully everyone's okay, all that. But I think that's gonna light a fire, pun intended,
Yeah.
under the Rams, and I think that's gonna help them in the playoffs this upcoming Sunday, and then Baltimore and Buffalo. I've got Baltimore.
Wow. Good, good, good. All right. Well, I need to get off of here, but
Do you have time for one more question?
absolutely.
What is going on with Deontay Johnson?
Oh, I don't know all about this. Go ahead and tell me.
So he was with Pittsburgh last year.
Right?
During the offseason, he was traded to Carolina.
Right?
Carolina traded him to Baltimore this year. He didn't
Right?
last long in Baltimore. They released him. The
Yes.
Texans picked him up, and they just released him again. This man's been traded twice and released twice within a year span.
Wow, I didn't know that. Well, I don't know what's going on with him. It, Maybe he needs an attitude adjustment.
Well, I know in Baltimore he refused to go in for a play, and that's why they released him. But I don't know why Houston now released him.
Oh, he's that guy that wouldn't
That
go in for
guy.
the play. Ah, he does need an attitude adjustment because that's not the only thing he did in Baltimore. He's a jerk. Yes. Yeah, there's. Can you imagine what he's like in the locker room? Yeah, I can guarantee you that's part of the problem. By the way, I don't have time to get into this, and I'm not even sure who all is available and who all is needed. But there are several teams that need coaches now, because this is the time of the year that they fire and do all that type of stuff. I do
Right.
know
Mike
the
McCarthy, I know, is out of Dallas.
big talk one is the one that's going along with um, the big talk one is the one that's going along with Deion Sanders in Dallas. That's the big talk one. But the funny one is Belichick. Belichick just now went to North Carolina. Big talk about him coming to college and all this. And now every one of these teams want him. And of course, he'll make lots more money in the NFL than he would with North
Right.
Carolina. And I mean, what's North Carolina do? I mean, they're banking on this guy, and all of a sudden he's being asked to do what he loves, and I think he misses the NFL. And it's like, oh boy, now what do you do? I mean, that's just a slap in the face almost to the whole franchise. So
Well, I mean, he has nothing left to prove in the NFL. So that's the reason why I could see him staying in the college game, because he has nothing left to prove in the NFL.
I agree. I agree with that. He doesn't, and I'm not
So
sure. I mean, all the teams that are there are so, and I don't mean this as ugly as it's going to come out, but they're so bottom feeders that I don't know that he could handle it. He's not used to bottom. I mean, it's been so long since he's been around bottom feeding stuff that I don't know if he could take it.
I don't think he wants to deal with it.
Exactly.
If
That's
he
what I
were
mean.
if he were to take a coaching job in the NFL, it would have to be an established team
Yeah,
already, and I don't
yeah.
see one that would
I
be
don't
willing
either.
to get rid of their coach.
I don't, and he also is used to a good quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
and unless one of these teams picks up a good quarterback, I can't see him wanting to be there. I really can't. I mean, it's one thing to expect that at the college level, but at the level of NFL, he's going to expect good stuff. He's
Yeah.
not going to expect, goofy stuff. So, well, hey, my friend, I do need to go. I do want to
Alrighty.
do a college podcast next because there's plenty to talk about there too,
Yes.
and we can talk more about this Belichick stuff even.
Yes.
So,
Like, subscribe, comment, all that. Social media, Instagram, TikTok, all that. And
hey,
we
and
will
don't
see.
give us topics to talk about.
Yes.
We are please, if you have questions, if you have comments, if you don't like what I say about some of these teams, tell me. I don't mind. I can take it. Uh, I, hey, I have my favorites. You have your favorites. So don't hesitate to tell me.
Yes.
If I say something about a quarterback or somebody that you like, let me know. Thanks.
Yes.
Have a great night.
All right. Bye.
Bye.